Hello, my name is Bonnie Burke, and I work for Workforce Resource. Today's webinar is titled Problem Solving. If you complete this session, along with 3 other sessions, teamwork, following directions, and how to succeed at your next job, you will earn a certificate titled Critical Employment Skills. So stick around and talk to the resource specialist at your job center and ask them to print your certificate when you are done. There are 3 main points that I hope you take away from this presentation. To begin with, I want you to be able to explain what are the benefits of using a formal problem-solving process. Now, I'm not talking about little hiccups that happen at work or in our lives. This is a process to be used with the bigger problems. And I want you also to be able to describe some various problem-solving tools that we'll be able to use in this webinar. I want you to be able to apply practical and creative problem-solving techniques to generate, implement, and sustain solutions. From my experience, the sustain is the most difficult piece. How do we address problems? Well, sometimes the first thing that we need to do is to step back and learn how to see them, to get the big picture. To prove my point, I'm going to have you watch this video. And this video is going to make you think of the importance of looking at the big picture first. So the directions are, this is a team of basketball players. There is a white team, people with white t-shirts on, and a black team. Your directions are to count how many times the white team passes the ball. Pretty simple, right? Count how many times the white team passes the ball. So watch the video and I'll see how well you did. How many passes did you count? Well, there were 15. Yet, did you see the gorilla in the room? When I have showed this video, on an average, about 75% of students do not see the gorilla in the room. How is that, right? Why that happens is because we were focused. We were told to look only at the white team. And we were busy, we were counting. We were so focused on one situation that we did not see the whole problem. So I hope that next time you are working on a problem that you think, have I looked at the gorilla in the room? The next tool that I'm going to show you, it's actually called the 9 deadly waste. When I worked in manufacturing, this is a tool that I showed to all my employees. I wanted to make sure that they knew how to identify problems and waste in their work area. So the first waste that can happen in any job, regardless if it's retail, you're working in a kitchen, or you're working in an office, is rework. How many times do you have to do something over again? Keep in mind, typically, the customer pays us to do it one time. Any of the rework is typically labor that that employer has to eat. Yikes. How about scrap? Are there jobs where you have to throw things away that you can't rework them? Another waste that I would share with my employees is the waste of motion. Well, in manufacturing especially, you don't want them to stand around like robots and not move throughout the day. It's not good for our bodies either. However, I have had jobs where I think I've spent about 50% of my day looking for things. I went to look at the other end of the plant for the forklift, and then I drove it back. And then I couldn't find my paperwork. And then I came back. And then I couldn't find my tools, so I had to go back to the maintenance to find my tools. So motion. The customer doesn't pay us to walk. How about if your job is you're driving between locations? Can you use technology to minimize that? Overproduction. Do you do more than what the customer has paid for? If your customer has ordered 500 cakes and you make them 510 cakes, just in case some fail, those 10 cakes really are a waste, and keep in mind, the customer did not pay for them. How about transportation? Now, we talked a little bit about driving between locations. Well, how many times, thinking of, I'll use manufacturing again, is material moved from one part of that shop floor to another location in that shop floor? Granted, we sometimes have to use forklifts. Sometimes we have to use conveyor belts. But thinking of, can we reduce or minimize the movement of that material? Transportation, when I think of all the semi-trucks that are out on the highways, is there anything that companies can do to minimize that? How about excessive inventory? We have to have enough material to do our job, right? Regardless of what the job. However, if we have too much inventory, and depending on what it is, if it's food, well, of course, it could go to waste. And inventory has to be counted. It is counted as an asset on your books. So excessive inventory, now you have to store it. Once again, with my background in manufacturing, I know of a facility that actually built an entire warehouse to store finished good inventory. An entire warehouse. They had a little bit of excessive inventory. How about overprocessing? Do you ever do more to a product than what the customer has paid for? Well, every once in a while, it's great to go above and beyond. However, if every day we are going above and beyond of what that customer has paid us to do, now it's costing the company more labor. So have a clear vision, clearly understand what the customer has paid for. Waiting. Have you ever had a job where you wait? And granted, most of us are not just going to grab our cell phones and do a text. Well, some of us. And we're not going to be like the construction guys out on the highway and standing on the shovels. Most of the time we have to stop what we're doing, go find another job and get involved, and then go back. In manufacturing, most of the time, people spend time waiting for their next order, for approvals, or maintenance when their machines are broke down. So what do you spend time waiting for? Another waste that I would talk to my employees about is information. Do they have the right information to do their job? Is that information correct? Or do they have so much information that it's information overload? The last waste that I really tried to eliminate, however, some companies do not, and it's the waste of underutilizing your employees. When you look around any work area, there's typically many years of work experience, lots of training, lots of knowledge. Employers need to ask their employees' opinion. Employers need to get their employees involved in their problems. Also, I wanted to mention briefly some administrative problems. Because remember, companies have problems not just in manufacturing, in almost every occupations. And so we would also look at administrative problems. Do you have forms that need approval? Even sometimes unnecessary approvals. Do you have incompatible software? And and it takes forever to get something done? Or do you have to do excessive reports? I remember I used to have to do an end of the day report, an end of the week report, an end of the month report. Ugh, yikes. I spend so much time putting in reports, I was having a hard time being productive. And how about all those meetings? Do we really need to have all those sit-down meetings? How about missing information? Another administrative problem that can slow down productivity. And then also, we used to challenge our HR folks with this. This is not an easy thing to do. But what about the time it takes to get a new employee? If you're short of employees, typically you can't be as productive. So I want you to use your handout, the one that looks like that big wheel of waste, and I call it the 9 deadly waste, and use that as a guide. And I want you to think about your last job. What were some of the wastes in your job? You can either circle them on that handout, or if it's something else, jot it down on the side. So why is it important to address these problems? Money is one of the main reasons. Unless you're working for a not-for-profit, all of those problems can cause companies to lose money. The other piece, and I'm going to put my safety hat back on, is safety. If we're waiting for machines, we may bypass some safety features just so that we can get our job done. Safety in any workplace is so important. How about morale? Oh, if we spend our days with rework, if we spend our days with reports or unending meetings, most employees will walk out at the end of the day going, oh my gosh, I survived another day. But another reason to me is global competition. We live in a world that it is very easy to find customers or suppliers in a different country. So I want to share with you some tips and steps on how to solve problems. Your handout is titled Plan, Do, Check, Act. This problem-solving tool has been around for many, many years. It was actually designed by a man whose name was Deming. Deming worked in China after World War II, and he brought this problem-solving process back to the United States. Plan, Do, Check, Act. So follow along on your handout. There are several different steps to his process. And the first one is you have to define what is the problem. Put it in writing, write it out as a sentence. And next, most of us want to jump into solutions. Once we know what the problem is, how do you fix it, right? Well, if it's a large problem, if it's something that's costing the company money, if it's a safety issue, you need to take the time to analyze the problem, define what's the root cause. Once you've spent time analyzing the problem, then you can jump into solutions. That's the fun part. The next part is you plan. What do you need to change? What do you need to implement? And then to implement the changes. That to me is also the hard work, but it's the fun work as well. I'm going to share with you a true story, and I'm going to make a long story short. In manufacturing, we had a problem. Our employees were spending way too much time walking. They had piles and piles of inventory that they had to move around. So we created a manufacturing cell. We designed that cell from a blueprint I asked our engineers to print. We took the machines on that blueprint, cut them out, put them on a magnetic whiteboard, and laid out how we felt we needed the new department to look. It took a long time because maintenance had to say, oh, okay, yes, we can put the electrical drops in here. And oh, yep, we can do the air hoses here. So lots of time planning, some budgeting was required. We got the okay from management. We came in on a Saturday. Now remember, Saturdays are typically time and a half, and we were going to rearrange that department based off of that blueprint on that magnetic whiteboard. Well, guess what? we did not ask the engineers to print that blueprint to scale. You know what that means? Nothing fit. Whoops, that was an expensive error. Whoa, trust me, we never repeated that error. So we did the best we can. We implemented it the best we can. We evaluated our results. We had to go back to the drawing board, change things again. But because of those changes, we had to train now the employees to that new layout. Make sure that you inform everybody who is affected by it. And then the last step of the problem solving is to evaluate. Did we solve the problem? Did we make a difference? And then, once again, the hardest part is sustain. So you've invested in the solution, you've implemented it, you've trained it. The important piece now is sustain. So plan, do, check, act. Pretty powerful process. So I'm going to just explain each one of those steps in a little bit more detail. Define the problems, list the steps, or even map the process. Remember I talked about my blueprint? Write a problem statement. The problem is, fill in the blank. This tool is called a spaghetti diagram. We use this a lot in manufacturing when our employees would come to us and say, hey, we spend a lot of time walking. This can be used in an office as well. Where does information flow? Where do employees have to walk? So we would give each employee a marker, and we would have them write on the map where they walk throughout their day, and then we would have them address why. It was sometimes an eye-opening tool because we could take a look at not only the feet that they had to walk, but the time that was wasted. So it's called a spaghetti diagram because if it's done correctly, typically it looks like a plate of spaghetti when they're done. So another tool that I want to share with you to analyze the problem is called a fishbone diagram. A fishbone diagram is going to help you identify the root cause. Avoid addressing only the obvious causes. So look at this fishbone. To do this tool, in the head of the fish, that's where you write your problem. Remember I said define the problem. The problem is. Put it in the head. So then the fish bones, the areas that you address on each one of the bones are what people or staff affect this problem or are involved. How about information? Once again, do we have the right information? Do we have enough information? How about our materials? Do we have the right materials? Do we have too much materials? Do we have the right machines? How about management? Does management support this problem? Does management give you the correct resources? And the last bone is environment. Is it such a stressful work environment that it keeps people from being productive? Is it really cold? Is it really hot? Is it really noisy? So take a look at management, environment, information. All of those bones, you list your relevant information, and it's one tool that can help you look at what are the root causes of that problem. Do your fishbone diagram, I so encourage you, on a big whiteboard. Or if this is a tool you want to use at home, just get out a big piece of paper and have some fun with it. The reason why I encourage people to analyze a problem, to step back and look at root cause, is to help you address what's really going on. I love this picture of an iceberg. Keep in mind, this is an actual picture. I think it's pretty cool. Just like an iceberg, only 1/8 of it is above the water. So if we start jumping into solutions and haven't taken the time to look at root causes, we are not uncovering the big picture. We may have only put a Band-Aid on that problem and not solved the problem permanently. So think of the iceberg. The next piece of problem solving and looking at root cause is to look at data. it is really easy for us to look at hard data. What are the cycle times? How much did we scrap? How long were those astronauts in space? Soft data, though, is hard to measure, but it's also equally as important. For an example, ask the employees, so what's the feeling, what's the mood out here? What's your opinion? What do you think, what's your attitude about this? How are your coworkers dealing? What's the frustration level at? So talk to the employees, get their opinion, but then also take the time to gather hard data. I'm going to give you an example of a tool that we used in manufacturing. I called it my checklist. Anytime a machine was having a problem, now once again, you can use a checklist in any occupation. In this checklist, it was for a motor assembly, and they were having some problems. They were getting defects. So I asked the operators every day to put a tick mark down which would indicate what type of defect that they had. So Monday through Friday for 1 week, I had them make notes for me. Pretty easy. Didn't cost anything except a little bit of time. So at the end of the week, we had a very clear picture on where to focus our problem-solving efforts. Had I started with, the mask was insufficient, the masking tape, well, that wouldn't have addressed the big problem. With this checklist, I clearly was able to see that the supplied parts were rusted. That's where I started our efforts around. So check sheets, very easy to do. However, if you're asked to do it by your supervisor, be honest, don't just pencil whip it. Or if you're giving someone else a checklist, make sure you follow up with them. If they have gathered you data, try to do something with it. The next step of problem solving is the plan. Remember the plan, do, check, act? Well, after gathering the data and analyzing the root cause, typically this is the hardest part. It really is. This is where a lot of supervisors just jump into solutions and just say, I don't have time for all this. After doing this, however, the focus of the project or the problem can change. I have seen that happen many, many times. They thought the problem was people. Well, the problem actually wasn't people, it was the machines. So taking the time to do this can really help in the big picture. Once again, you're not going to do this for small problems that you can just fix. And sometimes you do have to put a Band-Aid, so to speak, on a problem so you can get the job done. Yet, those Band-Aids will fall off if you haven't fixed the problem. One of the tips that we did is we took pictures before and after. Now remember at work, if you want to take pictures, ask your supervisor first, yet it's a powerful tool, and we always took before and after pictures. This actually was our record retention room. Yikes. How would you find anything in this mess, right? Well, some of our employees had to. If we were audited, let's just say it was an accounting audit, and they had to go find some documentation. Granted, it may be on their computer, yet oftentimes auditors want to see the paperwork. It would take them hours and hours, and sometimes days to find it in this mess. So the problem was, it took them a lot of time to find their records. But once we really looked at it, the time was just part of the problem. The real problem was we did not have an organizational process in place to help them. There was no racking up in that room. The lighting was horrible. So we worked with a group of people. Some of them were from human resources, some of them were from maintenance. We also had our accounting information was up there. Every time a person brought a box up to that area, they put a label on it. Remember, most records do not have to be kept forever. Some only have to be kept for a year. Some only have to be kept for 7 years. So on that label, they had to write the destroy date, or in those rare occasions, the do not destroy label. Every department had their assigned area and it was color coded. We put up racking. The only thing that this cost us was time and the lighting. Probably the time to organize it was the biggest expense. But the biggest issue wasn't the time to do it, was did we have a process in place that they could sustain? Wouldn't it be disappointing to go back up to that room 3 months later and have it look like this again? So to sustain, we did audits. Every 3 months, somebody would take turns to walk through the area to say, did it look like this picture? And if not, what did we need to change to make it look like this picture? Depending on the process or the problem, videotaping was a tool that I used a lot in manufacturing, but this will work in any process. When you're videotaping, it's going to give you a big picture of what's going on. Sometimes in the work environment, it's so hard to take in everything, all of the movements, all of the material, all of the timing. So if you're going to videotape a process, i.e. problem, make sure you tell the people first. Most employees hate this. Most women would say, yes, you can videotape me, but don't get my face and don't get my butt. Okay, I'll work on that, right? Yet that videotape is the best place to do time studies. So think about it. If you videotape, ask for permission first. I wanted to share with you another problem that we addressed in manufacturing. This problem, you can tell by looking, right? Look at all of that debris. Our employees had set a goal. Every day, it took them 1 hour to clean that machine. You might think an hour, that's not too bad, right? That's an hour of lost productivity. And we had 2 shifts. So really, every day, it was 2 hours. And look at the potential damage it could have done to the electronics on that machine. So our goal was to reduce the cleanup time from 1 hour to 30 minutes. 30 minutes was still too long. However, it was a good starting point. So we got a team of people together, from engineers to maintenance to the production employees. And together, they looked at what's the root cause? What is causing all of this debris? Did they achieve their goal? Yes, they did. Did it take time? Oh, absolutely. But eventually, they got that cleanup time down to 15 minutes. And I am sure that machine ran a lot better and a lot longer as well. So set a goal, make it achievable, make it one of those SMART goals, and make sure that you've measured, did we achieve our goal? The next tool that I want to talk about that we would videotape a lot is setup. Now, setup can be anything from, if you work in a kitchen, how long does it take to get it organized and get it ready to start making food? It could be anything if you were an accountant. How long does it take for you to get all of your documentation, get all of your approvals? In manufacturing, a setup is your machine, from last good part to the next good part. How long does that take? Sometimes it's really difficult for people to get their heads around that. Can I reduce that setup time? Really? Well, a good example that I want you to watch is race car. Think of the pit stop. Think of that crew. What do they do and how long does it take them? On an average, it takes them 14 seconds, maybe 16 seconds. In that time, they change 4 tires, they refuel that car, they maybe even wash the windshields. 14 seconds? Oh my gosh, I don't think I could change a tire in less than an hour. I'm a wimp, I guess. But remember, they have the right tools. They don't have a little jack like I do in the back of my trunk. They have the right tools. They have the right number of employees, and those employees have all been trained. And they practice. They don't just do this one time, jump into the pit. Now, I know that's unsafe, and I don't want people to work unsafe. Yet, this is a great analogy to think about. It's a process. And how do we reduce the time of a process? Well, think of NASCAR. I think it might help. Earlier, we talked about setting SMART goals. Well, this slide is going to explain to you in detail what is a SMART goal. Remember I said on our machines, our SMART goal, it was very specific. It was measurable. We needed to reduce that setup time, that cleanup time from 1 hour to 30 minutes. Was it achievable? We really felt it was. Was it relevant? Absolutely. If we didn't do it, that machine, chances are, would have a much shorter life. And the morale from the employees was horrible about it. And was it time-bound? We hoped to have accomplished that within a month. We had to purchase some equipment, so we didn't achieve that part of our goal. But SMART goals take the time to look at this definition. I'm going to give you an example of a goal that does not quite meet the definition. For an example, if your goal was to reduce scrap by 20%, well, what type of scrap? And what's the time frame? Do I have a year? Do I have 6 months? And which department? So rewrite that goal into a SMART goal. How's this for a SMART goal? Reduce the setup time on press 1 by 50% by December 2nd. It's time-bound, very specific. I'm assuming it's relevant. So think of your problem that you identified earlier. I'd like you to take a minute now and write a SMART goal. If you cannot think of a work-related problem, think of a problem that you might be having right now. It could actually be job searching. Your SMART goal could be something in job attainment. I need to find a job, be specific with the time period. So I want you to use the SMART goal outline and write a SMART goal to either a work-related problem or a job search-related problem. The next step of problem solving, I've said this already, but it is finally, I always felt, the fun part. Because everyone has ideas for solutions. So develop not just one solution, but generate a list of possible solutions. If possible, sometimes can you simulate the solution? Can you pretend? Can you walk through those steps? The other piece with the solutions, it's really important to remember to gain consensus from the appropriate people. So if you have some solutions for a department and there's 5 people in that department and you're going to make those changes, if you don't ask for their opinion, ask them to say, hey, are you willing to give it a try? It can possibly fail because you failed to get their buy-in. So gain consensus. Most of the time in the real world, we can trial. What are we working on? Can we practice it first? And make revisions if needed. Implement on a trial basis, make revisions when needed. So evaluate results. You may need to gather additional data, time studies to verify the results. Remember my machine issue with all that dust? Well, we only knew if we reduced that cleanup time when we actually had the stopwatch and videotaped it using that stopwatch. So yes, we did achieve our goal. Remember I said about taking before and after pictures? Those after pictures can be a sense of pride. We used to actually hang them on a bulletin board in our break room. Employees love to see those before and after pictures. The other piece that oftentimes management wants to see is, so did you save us any money? Or did you lose us some money? I'm very, very proud to say that with my last job, I was in charge of continuous improvement teams. Some companies refer to that as lean. Our teams that were solving problems throughout just 1 year, our teams saved the company $450,000. We celebrated and we were very, very proud of our results. Before and after pictures. If you're not familiar with manufacturing, you might be thinking, what in the world am I looking at? Well, on the left, before, some of their tools were under their table, some of their tools were missing. They didn't have what they needed to do their job. It's not too bad, it's not horribly messy. Look at what our employees created. They created a shadow board, relatively inexpensive. They bought a pegboard, maybe $25, and they painted it. Every tool that belonged on that pegboard, they cut out a shadow with white contact paper. It was so easy to see at the end of their shift were any tools missing. We encouraged our employees to set the next shift up for success. So at the end of the day, before the supervisor left, they checked were all the tools put back. The document that you can see on that shadow board is actually a checklist of all the steps that they should take at the end of their shift to set up that next shift for success. If anyone has worked in a company where there is first shift and second shift, you know that there's oftentimes, they did this, well, they did that finger pointing, that blame. I don't think there's ever a magic solution how to avoid that. Yet tools such as the shadow board helped our employees. Standardize the solution. Number one, make sure that anyone is affected is trained. They know about the changes. The audits. Remember our audit room, our record retention room, I should say. When we audited that room, if it didn't look how it needed to look, we called the people back up. We called the HR people, the accounting, the maintenance people, and ask them what's working, what's not. Update work instructions. Most jobs have work instructions. Do they need to be changed? Do they need to be updated? In manufacturing, anytime we made a change, we also had to update our engineering change orders, or sometimes they're referred to as ECOs. Very important step, especially in manufacturing. I wanted to share with you this book. This book was one of the tools that helped our company sustain any improvement. Remember that wheel of waste, those 9 wastes? Well, we saved the company money. Remember I said about the $450,000? I honestly felt we helped with safety and we helped with morale. However, if things started to fall apart, and which is normal, they do, we needed to have a tool to help sustain. This book was so powerful. Our managers loved it. They actually paid us to read it. You heard it. Our employees were given time to sit in the break room and read this book. It gave them tools to sustain. I loved it. So check this book out of your local library if you're interested. It's called Creating a Lean Culture, Tools to Sustain Lean Conversion. Remember I said some companies call it problem solving, some companies might call it continuous improvement. Our company at one time called it lean. So what does all this mean to you? It can mean a sense of pride. I was so excited, along with all of our employees, when we realized we just helped that company save $450,000. Doesn't always happen. We had some problems that we couldn't resolve. We had some problems that we just had to put on hold until we had money to help resolve it. It can also help enhance reviews. On our annual performance reviews, our supervisors actually commented on Did our employees help solve problems? Or were they involved in problem solving in their area? For some companies, they actually give bonuses or incentives. And sometimes if you can help that company be more profitable, it can maximize those incentives. We all live in a world, what's in it for me, right? Well, if you identify a problem in your workplace, this is something big. If you can get involved, if you can talk to that employer about the Plan, Do, Check, Act, think about what this could mean not only for you, but what could it mean for that employer? I have a few questions I'd like us to review before wrapping up this presentation. My first question, why is it important to use a formal problem-solving process? Remember the iceberg? If we don't step back, take a look at root cause, we may miss and not see the big picture of what's really going on. It's okay to put a Band-Aid on a solution, and sometimes we have to. But remember, Band-Aids fall off. Your second review question, what does PDCA stand for? You might have that on one of your handouts. Did you get Plan, Do, Check, Act? That was a formal problem-solving process that Edward Deming created. List 2 tools that can help you diagnose root cause. Did you remember the fishbone diagram? It's such an easy tool, it doesn't cost anything. What about the tool of using a checklist or a video? List 4 of the 8 ways. Can you list them without looking at your handout? Scrap and rework, motion, excess inventory, over-processing, just to name a few. What does SMART stand for? And I know all of you are very smart. Did you get it? SMART is a definition for a SMART goal. The goal needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be achievable. Can I actually achieve it? Is it relevant? Does it matter? And is it testable? Can you verify yes or no that I achieved our goal? Sometimes when I think of SMART goals, I think of Weight Watchers. A couple years ago, I joined Weight Watchers, and my goal was to lose weight. Well, if that's all my goal was, to lose weight, did I achieve my goal if I lost a pound? Yay! No, my goal was to lose 10 pounds within 6 months. Was it realistic? I think so. Was it achievable? Was it measurable? Was it smart? It was smart. I cannot gain weight. It's not good for my health. So, SMART goals. What are some things you can do to sustain an improvement? Wow. Remember, I feel this is the most important part of problem-solving process. Think of the last time you spent time cleaning your house or cleaning your garage. If you spent an all-day Saturday or even a Saturday morning, you've got the dishes done, the laundry done, the floors swept, things are looking pretty darn nice. And by Monday, if it all looks the same, what a waste of time, right? Well, in our work world, that can happen also. So we need to put some things in place to help us sustain. The first one, I really fully believe, is having everyone trained, making sure everyone knows of the importance of why things were changed and getting their input. Remember I said we audited the room? Audits can help as well. Remember that tool board? We helped sustain that those tools got put back by the white shadow that was behind it. So very easy things to help sustain. And remember the book by David Mann, Tools to Sustain Lean Improvements. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation on problem solving. We covered a lot of information. I hope these tools can help you not only in your job, but also in your personal life. Thank you for attending, and have a great day.